taking the approach of the AMA just kind of was very shocking and surprising and unlike a very large publicly traded company to do.
Welcome to the Company Growth Podcast.
This is the Company Growth Podcast. This is Alysha Dominico.
I'm your host, Alysha Dominico. My friend Chelsey is here today from Cannack. Chelsey focuses on inbound marketing like Tangible Words, but she's got a real niche in the cannabis industry. If you follow Chelsey on LinkedIn, you'll see she's always getting people to have conversations about what to expect about marketing and how you can improve the things that you're already doing. Chelsey, welcome.
Thank you.
The ask me anythings that you have done before, and why would, what's the whole concept between, the hashtag AMA, ask me anything? How did that all get started?
It was actually when I was working at my previous agency. We would host them for clients to try and get backlinks for their websites and drive traffic. So, we would basically just have the client on the phone, a moderator that would be asking the questions from the audience online and then responding on the client's behalf. And it really got a lot of their clients involved and engaged, as well as new eyes on the company, and drove a lot of traffic and leads for their business, and really engaged with the audience online.
Okay, I have so many questions about everything that you just said. Let's go back a step. When you're trying to grow a company, and you said, you've worked with clients in the past where you've helped them try to grow their reach and their audience, particularly their digital footprint, growing that online by getting more people engaged and having more backlinks. Everybody who's listening to this podcast is focused on growing their company. So why would they, let's go back a few steps about growing your audience online and how that works.
So, everybody nowadays has a phone and they're going to Google and search, what they want to know, where they want to go, and how to do something. So really, having an online presence is really important. And Reddit gets a lot of traction and a lot of traffic. People are very engaged and active on Reddit. And so it really makes a lot of sense to kind of put the CEO in the spotlight, and have them be engaging one-on-one with those, online consumers. And I could totally talk for a really long time about backlinks and the whole SEO game, but that's pretty much just how the AMA kind of stuff works, and why we would do that.
We are going to talk about backlinks and SEO because it's not something we've covered on the show yet. So I do definitely want to pick your brain on your opinions there. So we'll come back to that in a second. But so the audience on Reddit, you're speaking to consumers mostly, not a B2B, but more of a B2C commitment, and the CEO from, a large B2C company can do really well on Reddit. Is that how you see it fitting in?
Yeah, it can be a little intimidating, I think, at first for the person who's in the spotlight, because they will be faced with, possibly hard questions. For example, one of the clients that I helped was a CEO of a national pet insurance agency. So you can imagine the type of claims and angry people that were asking questions about different insurance aspects. And so
for their pets, let's just clarify.
Yeah. So it's, you have to at least be able to answer those type of questions with a certain level of positivity and not be so intimidated by those, critic type of questions.
Yeah, when someone's going after you or being a troll, every negative comment can be a positive comment, and not that we're ever trying to sugarcoat things online. I think you're saying more that lean into it, because there either is a learning or an opportunity to turn that person around into a positive experience with your brand from the way that you respond.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of transparency that comes with it and helps to build trust with a larger audience, because you're addressing an issue that it makes it a lot more like you're not scared to sweep anything, you're not sweeping anything underneath the rug. You're not scared to kind of hide behind the curtain, if you will. You're more or less just saying, hey, yeah, this is how it is. And, really addressing it head on.
Yeah, like even just we're sorry, we know it's in the roadmap, we're working on it, can go a huge way for a lot of the SaaS companies that I work with.
Yeah. And it's those kind of answers that, it's not super intimidating.
I think what's great about that is this is something you and I were talking about on LinkedIn recently, the humanness, like telling that brand story and showing the humans behind it. When you write in on a customer service complaint and maybe you're mad about it, so you're kind of, your tone's off, or you're not as friendly and like upbeat as you are, and then that person just kind of kills you with kindness back. It is so deflating to your anger. You suddenly realize, like, give your head a shake. I mean, I'm so guilty of that, and I've learned to not be that person, but I think it's helped me realize the power of showing the human behind the screen.
Yeah, there was last week there was an AMA done with a very large cannabis company, and the CEO went on there, and there was a lot of backlash, a lot of talk about it. The company's not doing so well, and it was different because the normal approach would be to issue a press release and be, say their messaging or what they want to say through the media and on, the news broadcasts and things like that. But taking the approach of the AMA just kind of was very shocking and surprising and unlike a very large publicly traded company to do. And I think that shows a lot of transparency, and, it's a good sign of the company is going to be turning around, I personally think.
Totally agree with you. I mean, Google just released a series of videos about the future of marketing, and they're talking about that human is behind the brand. And they were talking about how important it is to be visible and to reconnect your brand story with your mission and what you're trying to do. I mean, in the 90s, everyone used to put their vision and values out there. And I spent all of like the new millennium telling people, don't just say your vision and values, because it was just so smack you in the face with the language. And it didn't mean anything because everyone had these visions and values that were crafted by, I don't know, somebody who wasn't speaking to people in the room. So now we're saying those vision and values are really important, but it's in the way you act and in the way you behave and the way you treat your customers and the way that you show up for something like an Ask Me Anything instead of just doing that perfectly crafted press release.
Yeah, I think it shows a lot. And, it's giving a lot of value back too, because you're giving your transparency and putting it out there and not kind of holding it back. So I think it's just, it's very good for leaders to do today, especially if they are trying to grow and build a following and kind of gain the trust of a larger group of people.
Totally. Can you explain the format again of how the Reddit experience went and how you hosted it and talk about who the audience was?
Yeah. We would do a lot of prep work before. We would have some people join in and ask some questions. We put a little bio. We have the client create a little bio about themselves. Hi, I am so-and-so. I've been a veterinarian for X amount of years. These are the type of, pets that I work on and procedures that I do. I'd like to, open up to the audience to ask me kind of anything. And, there's that. And so we'll post that on there. I believe it's like 24 hours before. Okay. You have to have an authentication somehow. So they're going to give you a link and you need to post that link. We did it through Facebook. And then once it authenticates, then it'll be like a live AMA and it'll be okay. I haven't done one in quite some time, so I'm not too sure if the procedures have changed on that or not.
Okay, yeah.
But then once we have the date that we're going to do that, we share the link to the actual AMA with the client. They can distribute that out and market it as such. And then we'll set a date and a time. We get them on the phone. We have a moderator moderating. It's almost like a forum where people ask questions and then you respond. So we would have access to the client's account and respond on the client's behalf. So we'll ask them the question, they'll give their response, and then we have somebody kind of typing up the whole answer on there. So that way the client doesn't have to go in and do that kind of thing.
Right on. So it's them responding, but you're transcribing it on the Reddit platform for them.
Yeah.
And you're not also doing a podcast at the same time, or some kind of voice recording or webcam, or, YouTube Live or Facebook Live?
No, it is just a phone call. I think it might be beneficial to do that. If you had all of those systems plugged into one, it would be interesting. But yeah.
Do you have the internet for that capacity?
I know.
Maybe you do in California, but us in Ontario, I would want to double check that I'm in a good city hub.
Yeah.
So let's talk. The use cases you gave are really interesting. I totally see the case of, or you've explained very well the case of someone who has a brand that maybe has come under fire, or that is worried about what people are saying behind the scenes. So the cannabis company or the pet insurance claims, having a leader who is there to answer questions, much like the traditional press release forum used to be, or press conference, sorry, I should say, used to be. But now everybody can have access. So it's like taking a press conference and making it so that you don't have to be a secure journalist in the room. Anybody can be on Reddit or whatever platform you're using and ask a question, whether it's Facebook Live or YouTube Live. But what I think is also interesting is this use case of the veterinarian who wanted to do one. I mean, veterinarians typically have smaller groups of people that they're trying to reach because they're so locally focused. Like, I live on this street, so I take my dog to this clinic because it's nearby. So what was the strategy behind the veterinarian?
Really just to answer any and all type of questions. This was for veterinarians in Australia. So the pets might differ, I think, over there.
What do you think? They have pet pythons?
I know.
Okay, I'm Australian. There's no pet pythons except for this one lady I met in Queensland who actually did have one living in a roof. That was weird.
Yeah, so these clients were like enterprise clients, right? So the veterinarian was one out of multiple locations of a single brand.
Okay.
So it was a well-known veterinary clinic all throughout Australia.
Gotcha. So it's a franchise model.
Right. So it was more or less representing that larger brand and not like a mom and pop type of shop.
Can you see it working locally? I mean, is this something that people are doing? I guess they could be using it for customer service locally, as the same way that the cannabis company was using it was a sort of customer service, giving the love back example, or handling complaints, larger complaints or overarching strategy problems that customers are having with the brand, such as the pet insurance thing. Can you see it working on a local level? Like if you're selling insulation and you want to rank higher, is there any benefit there?
Yeah, I think that there is. There was a chiropractic clinic out here where I live, and he had set up a little area with a bunch of chairs, and every month he has these like meetings where he explains this new methodology of targeting nerves with chiropractic care and things like that. And he goes around and does speaking engagements. And so essentially, he's on, if you want to grow and not just stay within your small little business, I think it can definitely help, as that's an avenue that can get you more eyes online. So I think it's definitely helpful for like local businesses that are looking to grow and maybe open up more locations. I don't know if it's so much beneficial for smaller businesses that kind of just want to stay in the smaller community
that are just tied to that community. But let's talk about, we touched briefly before on SEO benefits and backlinks and the strategy behind that. So let's talk about the benefits of doing this on a more deeper level for SEO strategies or success.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. So Reddit has a lot of authority. I don't know what their domain authority off the top of my head is, but the domain authority is basically how much credibility your domain has. And when Sergey and I think it was Larry Page, the creators of Google, the whole model and algorithm based off of Google is based on how many links are linking back to your site. And that's how they've developed search engine, what it is today. And so we kind of use that same model to try and boost a site's authority, is by trying to get these backlinks to link back to a client's site. But the type of backlinks are going to depend on the authority of those backlinks. So a lot of times you'll see .gov sites, .org sites, .edu sites. They have a lot of authority because of those extensions. They are a lot more credible. And so, it was one of the strategies is trying to get links from those sites back to a client's site. A lot of times you'll see like news sites, New York Times or Forbes, getting a link from one of those sites is like gold, because they have a lot of authority. They've been around for a long time, and it's going to drive a lot of traffic back to your site.
And also they have high readership. I think the click rate is almost just as important. Like you can't just go out and buy a .edu domain name and then suddenly start ranking higher because of that. There's got to be some vetting process, right?
Yeah, that's not going to work because that domain would be so new. It's not going to have any backlinks to that domain. So there's a lot of marketers or people out there that think, if I buy this domain and I buy that domain and that domain and I have it all linking back to my site, it's going to do something, but it's not, because it hasn't been around for a while. It hasn't built up that authority.
Number one rule of SEO is start early and keep at it, right?
It's not something that you're going to see overnight and tomorrow. And a lot of marketers are focused, on quick wins or providing some sort of value quickly for their clients. And so they result to paid advertising. But good organic SEO built through really good content, through really good backlinks, and, just really good exposure online, you'll see those results year over year. And in the long run, and it will pay off, and you will start to get those leads and those conversions on your site over time.
Let's dispel some of the myths around backlinks though too, because you get all kinds of emails. I'm sure everybody who's listening gets all kinds of emails all day from people saying, hey, I'd love to write an article or do a backlink to your site. And it usually feels like spam. Am I right?
Yeah, I get them all the time.
So you and I are not recommending that people start sending out those emails, are we?
So there is, I would pitch certain publications and certain blogs and journalists on trying to write articles to get backlinks to a client's site. However, knowing which site has a good domain authority, is having a lot of traffic, and is totally active and has good readership today, is what you kind of want to look for when you're approaching a site to try and acquire a link on. It doesn't help when, you have a brand new influencer who doesn't have, hasn't been around for a while, and doesn't have that kind of audience and, eyes that a site that has been around for a really long time has. So I think it's important to kind of, vet your sites that you're going to be pitching, so it's really worth your time and it's going to pay off in the long run.
Let me just rant. If you do not know your publication and you do not know their readership and what their goals are as a publication, do not do your pitch, everybody who's listening, because that is the number one way you come across as spam, is just blasting a whole bunch of emails cold and saying, I have this article, I want to put it on your site. It really doesn't show me that you know anything about who I am. We had Rob Felber on from Felber PR in an earlier episode, and he talked about the importance of getting the pitch right and developing relationships with journalists. And Chelsey's brought up different strategies or different publications that you may want to research and reach out to. But what she's also suggesting is that you may reach out to a very great blog. It's not a traditional publication. It could be a digital publication. And that works too, but you really have to know the readership and the person who's going to be receiving that email if you want that to work. Let's go talk to me about cannabis, because I'm in Ontario. It's a heavily regulated industry now, and it's legal. People can buy it. why do cannabis companies, I mean, they're so hot, and obviously there's this, there are users who use, will always use, and maybe even they've attracted new users because of the opportunity to now purchase cannabis without feeling like a criminal. But why essentially do cannabis companies need to even do marketing? Don't they already have people who are just waiting for the product?
Oh man, that's an area where, you think you have a grip on consumer behavior and you really don't know consumer behavior. There's certain people that will use it for recreational use. There's certain people that will use it for medicinal use. And depending on whichever avenue that you're trying to approach, they have to be educated. There's a big gap within the industry that they're not educating their consumers enough. Typically what a lot of companies will do is they rely on the brand ambassadors within the retail stores to kind of educate consumers, but they haven't had any formalized training on the product itself. So they're, if a consumer goes into one dispensary and then goes into another, they might hear two completely different viewpoints, and that's not really helpful in trying to kind of educate the consumer and build that type of trust with them.
100%. And if there's any tools that you want to share, jump in right now as to how you're vetting ranking authority.
I use, oh my gosh, I think it's SEO Ninja.
Yep.
Or Outreach Ninja. And then there's Majestic is another one.
Thanks so much for being on here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.